One, two, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey everybody, it's Sam Jacobs and this is the Sales Hacker Podcast. We've got a fantastic show for you today. We've got Bill Binch, the Chief Revenue Officer of Pendo, one of the fastest growing businesses in the United States, perhaps the world. Bill is an acknowledged commercial great and leader. He spent over 10 years or close to 10 years at Marketo, starting, I think he may have been one of the earliest salespeople there, but rose up the ranks and eventually became EVP of Worldwide Sales. He helped launch in Japan. He helped launch in Asia Pacific region, and obviously saw Marketo through a bunch of liquidity events, including going public, and then ultimately the acquisition. He started his early career at PeopleSoft. He's really a fantastic leader, and it's really clear why people love working for him. So we're excited about that interview. Now, before we dive into it, as always, we have to thank our sponsors. The first is Chorus.ai, the leading conversation intelligence platform for high-growth sales teams. Chorus records, transcribes, and analyzes business conversations in real time to coach reps on how to become top performers. With Chorus, more reps meet quota, new hires ramp faster, leaders become better coaches, and everyone in the organization can collaborate over the actual voice of the customer. It is a fantastic tool. I've used it before. I'm a huge fan. Check out chorus.ai/saleshacker to see what they're up to. So that's chorus.ai/saleshacker. Our second sponsor, as you know, is Outreach. They are the leading sales engagement platform. Outreach supports sales reps by enabling them to humanize communications at scale, from automating the soul-sucking manual work that eats up selling time to providing action-oriented tips on what communications are working best. Outreach has your back. Now, coming up in March, Outreach is running Unleash 2019, the Sales Engagement Conference. This is going to be the definitive new sales conference in the world. It'll take place March 10th through 12th in San Diego. So if you're on the East Coast and you've got some March snowstorm that comes upon you when you thought it was going to start getting warmer, let's all go to San Diego. Instead, it's better there. It's dry, it's warm, it's sunny, it's beautiful. All kinds of things are legal there that aren't legal in other places. The listeners of the pod get $100 off simply for entering the code SHPOD. So listeners of the pod, you get $100 off. The code is SHPOD. Hop over to unleash.outreach.io and use the code SHPOD to save $100 off your ticket. I'm going to be there either moderating a panel or speaking, so you'll get to meet me in person, which is most people's highlight of their life, if not of the entire universe. Just kidding, but I will be there, and we'd love to see you there. So again, that code is SHPOD. Finally, I went through a lot of my LinkedIn requests, and there's just so many great people out there that are listening and sharing, and I want to thank you. Here are some of the folks. Kyle Roybal at Sendoso. Thank you, Kyle. Justin Cardillo, VP of Sales in Chicago. Justin, we're going to be launching the Revenue Collective in Chicago in 2019, so make sure you get involved. Ed Spencer at Salesforce. Austin Cowan, or Cohen, I hope I pronounced it right, at Bamboo, great HR platform. Anna Betcher at Campaign Monitor. She's listening all the way from Sydney, Australia. Dennis Burkholzer from Germany. Jason English from at Blue Wolf. Andrew Wohl working at Facebook. Darren Noble, Quantum Workplace. Brian Tate, Elaine Moorer, who's incorporating some of the stuff from Munya that we had on previous episodes. Sean Buxton, Matthew Dunn from Carbon Black. Hopefully Matthew heard the Amy Appleyard episode last week. Jerry Oney, who just messaged me on LinkedIn literally 3 seconds ago. All of you folks, thank you so much for listening, and this is going to be a great show. So without further ado, let's dive in and listen to this interview with Bill Binch. Hey everybody, it is Sam Jacobs, and you are listening to the Sales Hacker Podcast. Welcome to 2019. We are in the meat of 2019 right now, if I have my calendar programmed correctly. And today we're incredibly excited to have Bill Binch, who is the Chief Revenue Officer at Pendo. Pendo is we're going to learn more about the company, but one of the fastest growing businesses and one of the fastest growing startups, to my knowledge, in the US and perhaps in the world. And Bill has a really long and incredibly impressive background and history working at some of the most pivotal technology companies and high growth companies that all of us know a lot about. So really quickly, at Pendo, Bill oversees all revenue bearing aspects of the business, including the sales, customer success, and professional services organizations. He's had sales leadership experiences at Oracle, PeopleSoft, and BEA Systems. And then back in 2008, he joined a little company called Marketo, and he helped them grow from zero in revenue to over 250 million. Over nearly a decade, he helped lead the marketing automation giant from a small venture-backed startup to a public company to going private with its $1.8 billion sale to Vista Equity Partners in 2016. His sales operation grew from targeting B2B to B2C, from SMB to enterprise, and from domestic to global, with customers and offices all over the world. Most recently, Binch managed Marketo's Asia Pacific team based in Sydney, Australia, which is one of my favorite cities. And he's an advisor. If you're on his LinkedIn profile, you'll see that Bill is an advisor to a number of different high growth companies. So we are super excited to have you, Bill. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sam. I'm ready to get 2019 kicked off with you. So thanks for having me join.
This is a time travel experience because we're recording this with a few days left in 2018, but people will be listening in 2019. So what we like to do, just really quickly, Bill, is to get what we call, I read your bio, but we like to know a little bit of what we might call your baseball card, specifically around your current company, and give you an opportunity to pitch that business to the listeners a little bit. So your CRO at Pendo, what is Pendo? Tell us a little bit about what the company does, who they are.
Yeah, Pendo's in what we call the product analytics space, which we really define as being able to measure the user behavior of what your users are doing inside your app. So that's what we call insights. And then we allow you to action that. So we allow you to help guide that user experience to be better so that your customers end up loving what you do. The best real world or, common person language analogy that I could give you, Sam, is think about what a Fitbit does for the body, right? It tells you how many steps you've walked, how many stairs you've gone up, what your calories are, what your sleeping habits, and it allows you to control your calories, your intake. It allows you to drive your body to be better, right? That's what Pendo is for an application, is what Fitbit is to the body.
Understood. And it feels like it's probably like a fast-growing category and a competitive space. Roughly, obviously, private companies, confidential information and all that, but roughly how big is Pendo from an ARR perspective?
So we're all over 30 million. We are about 250 employees right now. And you used a really operative word there about growing space. And that's one of the things that was really exciting and appealing to me is you referenced my Marketo experience. When I joined Marketo, there were no Gartner quadrants for marketing automation. There were no companies like Oracle and Salesforce, who today alongside Adobe are the biggest vendors in that. And I saw a very similar type of growth on the horizon with Pendo, as I saw that this was a space that had well-funded organizations out there that were going and trying to define and create the category for what we are. So I think that'll be a good topic for us to cover off today.
And the category would be product analytics. Is that accurate? Am I defining it correctly?
Product analytics or user experience analytics, something along those lines. Like I said, there's no CRM vendor quadrant or marketing automation platform category name that's been created and had everybody kind of circle around yet. But product analytics is probably the best and most common used one.
Well, yeah, and if there isn't a category yet, it's up to if Pendo can define it. There are multiples of enterprise value that go to the person that coins the name, which is something I read about in this book, Play Bigger. So the total organization is 200. How many people are in the revenue organization?
Actually, a little over 250. I joined back in January here of 2018, and there was about 130, 140 folks. And today we're nearing 260. So we've almost
260 just in the revenue org?
No, 260 the entire company.
Yeah.
And about 120 comprise the sales, customer success, and pro services teams.
Got it. And is it, would you describe, is there a sort of a deal size, is it SMB, mid-market enterprise? Is there a specific slice of the universe that you're going after from a customer size perspective?
We cover small, medium, and large. The heritage of the company definitely followed a page out of the playbook that I think Salesforce created, and then Marketo, among many other companies followed, and started with the SMB, go get experience, go get transactions done with small customers, show that that your marketing message works, that your sales team can execute, that your customer success can get them live and launching, and give that feedback to the product team to continue innovating. And so for the last couple of years, Pendo has built a good reputation with about 700 customers in the small and medium segment, and are making that march upwards and to the right and moving into the strategic team. So while I've been here this year, we've quadrupled the size of our team that calls on enterprise and strategic accounts.
How's that going? I guess the headcount is growing. Are you seeing pipeline growth commensurate with the investments you're making in new personnel?
Yeah, it's been really successful. We have a vice president of sales engineering here named Brian Mez, and he came from Zendesk. And Zendesk is another one of these companies that has gone through this transition of starting small and going into bigger, more enterprisey companies. And he called something out. And as our head of sales engineer, he's kind of got a unique perch to see this. He said, Bill, I started last December of 17. And he said, the biggest difference between then and now is? And I said, what? And he said, the amount of security and InfoSec and questionnaires that we're going through right now during the sales cycle. And I said, what's your read on that? And he goes, the difference of logos of who we're calling on. Yep. It used to be the venture funded startups, and now it's the pro level software companies, that we're talking about now. So this year's been really successful in that march upwards. Like I said, we quadrupled the team this year. We won't do it. We won't grow that much next year on that team, but we've just gained a lot of confidence this year that our product is scalable, the functionality set is applicable, and that we can create a very compelling value case for those big companies.
Is your VP of sales engineering the person that manages what we would call like the RFP InfoSec database, where you're getting like the 200 questions in a spreadsheet and you go back to your library to make sure you're answering the same way you answered for the other ones?
Yeah, he is. So Pendo, our product being product analytics, we oftentimes sell to the product management function, the user experience function, the customer success function. And those tend to be people that vie or break a little bit more on the technical buy. And so almost everyone, in addition to demos, wants to do a trial. So our sales engineering function here is certainly the group that does requirements gathering along with the sales rep. They participate in doing the demos, though with, like I said, our buyer being fairly technical, most of our sales reps are all certified to do their own demos. But for the juicier ones, the SEs parachute in on, they do the RFPs, and then they also manage any type of proof of technology process.
Yeah, POCs. This is a highly tactical question, but that's why people come to the Sales Hacker podcast. Do you charge for your POCs, or is it kind of case by case?
No, we don't. Like I said, our founders are all former product people. And, I had to tune into this coming out of the last 10 years of being in marketing software, that marketing software, when we started and it wasn't a defined category, everybody asked for a trial. You're a small company. The space is a little bit unknown. They don't have budget for this, so they're going to have to go ask for incremental. So you need to go prove it. And then once Marketo got to about, 1,000 customers, and we grew our confidence, the space was shaping and forming up, we probably got a little bolder and started offering trials less often. And by the time I left, it was very infrequent that we were doing a trial or a proof of technology. Pendo, again, starting over and having a bunch of founders that came from the product space, they like to get hands-on. They like to feel the product. And so, there's a number of ways you can engage with Pendo. We have a playground that you can use. We have a free trial that is self-servicey, and you can download that. And then there's a more guided trial that we can give you a full version of the product. But typically what we do during that phase, Sam, is instead of charging for it, what we do is we ask this question. Look, if you're excited about doing a trial, it means that you're probably interested in potentially bringing this into your organization. Because otherwise, why would you exert the time? Why would you spend your team's resources to spend the next 15 or 30 days trialing some software? So let's project out 15 or 30 days from now and tell us what happens then. What's different now or then versus now? And we ask about what their process is, and we ask the question at that point, do you have money for this? And a lot of people say, no, we're going to have to go get money. And we say, well, tell you what then. While we're doing the trial, why don't we simultaneously help you build a business case? to show the impact that Pendo will have. And so that's been really helpful for, like I said, when it doesn't matter what your category is in software, Sam. If you're in a space that's newer or fledgling and you have people looking to buy it, you probably have to help them buy it, right? And,
Yeah.
It's not like buying CRM. I mean, almost every software in the company, every company that's in technology has a CRM, and it's a budgeted line item in their spend year after year. And so if you make a change, you might be changing your vendor, but it's at least something that already exists. In a younger space like product analytics, it may not exist. So we have to help our buyers buy a little bit.
And I think that's candidly the case in sort of the majority of software sales at this point, because there's so many new categories that are being formed, and that's, I guess, one reason why some people say that BANT is no longer like a relevant qualifying mechanism or criteria, because a lot of people don't ever have budget for these new things. They always have to kind of go build a business case.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and I'd say I've been on that riff for a few years, that realistically, if you do use a BANT style criteria in your qualification, that really what I care about is, does someone have a need? And I define a need as if they don't do something, there's some consequence. And that consequence tends to have a time frame. So the N and the T portion of BANT are the two things that are valuable to me. But the budget and authority won't, there's that saying out there that buyers are liars. So, the first person you're talking to may say that they're the decision maker when they're really not. And they might say that they have budget when they really don't.
Yeah. And then I had Brent Adamson on from Gartner, who wrote the Challenger books. And he's also saying that on average, it used to be 5.4, but now it's 8 different people within an enterprise need to sign off before a software purchase is made. So the idea that there's one person that signs the contract is also probably a little out of date.
Yeah, I caught that when they came out with the next book. I think it's the Challenger Customer. I saw that they'd had expansion of the 5 to the 8 people, and it is so true today. I mean, especially with GDPR coming in the last year, that you see that, God, I just didn't feel this way, but I'll say this, 5-10 years ago, it was easier to sell SaaS software. It wasn't easy. I'm not going to get caught, and get quoted saying that, but gosh, I wish we could go back in a way, because today, just the InfoSec and, we just hired at Pendo a chief information security officer. We have a data protection officer. We have a general counsel here, and the amount of commercial work they do is impressive comparative to what it looked like 5 years ago.
Yeah, no, sort of like the rising cost of doing business. So, and obviously today there's headlines about Facebook selling our personal emails to Netflix and Google and Amazon. So there you go. Yeah. So let's go back to the beginning and figure out how you got here and learn some lessons along the way. You came out, are you from Arizona originally? Is that right? Or you just went to Arizona State?
Yeah, I went to Arizona State, and then I really loved it and ended up back there about 15 years after I graduated. But grew up in California, grew up in Northern Cal, right in the heart of the Silicon Valley.
And so coming out, did you always know that you wanted to be in sales? I guess Oracle was your first job out of sales. Was it just, they were hiring and it was, you needed a job, or did you have like a perspective on how you wanted your career to go?
Yeah, I mean, my dad's been a tremendous influence on me, and he, started his career out of college at IBM and had kind of a classic, sales and marketing approach. And he ended up being a vice president at Oracle in the 80s and early 90s. And when I was graduating college, or I should say when I was in college, I'd come home for the summers, and I actually landed some internships at Oracle. I had 3 of them. And these are kind of funny to talk about today, Sam, but my first summer was in what they called the manufacturing and distribution warehouse. And we physically used to ship software.
Wow.
And to recognize revenue back in the day, like if it was Jan 31 or December 31, it had to ship that day. The software physically had to leave your warehouse. I mean, you had to have a waybill for it to get recognized. So we would work furiously at the end of months and quarters. So my first summer was shipping software, and I learned about what quarter ends really meant for businesses. Second summer, I went back and again, this is just amazing to say, but we had a physical contracts room at Oracle where all of the physical master services agreements and order forms were stored, because this was before imaging and having things online. And so when someone was coming to do a new contract and they had to reference it, they'd come up to this room and we managed the inventory there. And then my third summer was in the good old famous mail room. I delivered mail, which was, quite honestly, it's exactly what they say. It was a blessing in disguise, because I got to meet from everybody from Larry Ellison down in that organization by delivering mail. And so you just think about what I just said there. One was a summer of shipping software. We don't do that anymore. One was a summer of managing physical contracts. We don't do that anymore. Another one was working in a mailroom. Like, I'm sure they have a package department, but how much direct mail happens? So I was pretty directed, to give you a short answer, early in my career by, my dad. I saw what he did. I tuned into it, and I obviously had an in, so I took the in and worked at Oracle, and like I said, working in the warehouse and working in the mailroom got me a lot of connections. And so by the time I was graduating, I'd met the people that ran a group called DMD, Direct Marketing Division, and this is the group that a lot of famous people have been in, notably Tom Siebel, ran that group, and he went and founded Siebel Systems, and Mark Benioff ran that group for a while, and we all know what he went to do.
Did you work with Benioff?
They were the generation ahead of me. So Benioff was at Oracle while I was there. So, but he was doing different things. He had moved out of running the direct sales and was doing more product things.
Yeah. Well, I think for some of the young folks out there, they don't quite appreciate how Oracle and SAP and PeopleSoft, these were like the pillars. These were the companies, besides maybe Hewlett Packard, that really form the core foundation of B2B enterprise sales for most technology businesses. They are like the godfathers of the whole thing.
Totally. I graduated and I started my career as an SDR, and I quickly moved up to being a sales rep, and I did that for a couple of years. And then I hit a really interesting fork in the road, and I think you and I will probably explore this, but I had the opportunity to interview for being both a field rep, because back then you had inside and outside sales, and I was an inside sales rep in Redwood Shores. And I had the chance to interview to go to Chicago and be a field rep, and then also I had a really influential manager there that encouraged me to consider management. And I was 25 years old. I was out of school 3 years, and I was thinking, how many 25-year-old sales managers are there at Oracle? There weren't a lot. And so I went that direction, got the gig, and did that for a couple years, and worked for that same woman. And she encouraged me to apply for this director role in Boston. And I'd never set foot in the state of Massachusetts before, but I went for it, earned the job, moved myself to Boston, spent a few years there before wrapping up nearly a decade at Oracle and making a move to PeopleSoft.
So one quick question. I didn't realize that they had SDRs back then. So that's been a thing for at least 25 years.
The title was Direct Response Representative back then. But yeah, we got on the phones, and it was obviously less, there were no tools like Outreach or SalesLoft. This is 1993, so there was an internet, I guess, somewhere, but we didn't use it. It was mostly inbound phone calls. And so you were on the phone. And classic like today, you started on inbound typically and learned how to deliver the messaging and work with, potential buyers and qualify them. And then you moved to outbound.
Wow. That is so what and why'd you go from Oracle to PeopleSoft? Walk us through some of the big transitions, and then would love to also hear about, obviously you started at Marketo, so that's something that we want to hear a lot about.
Yeah. So it's a point in time story. So if you look at my 1993 to 01 period at Oracle, it was purely in transaction volume and velocity sales. It was all inside focused or channel focused. And we were just starting to do online and web sales at that point. So it was all the velocity stuff. And so what I like to say, Sam, is those 9 years at Oracle were like getting an MBA in transactional business. And I was really quite good at it. But at that point, and the models have changed a little bit since then, the challenge I was facing in, early 2000s was whenever I went out and said, hey, I have over 100 people that work for me. I have over $100 million quota that I manage. People go, this is great experience, great operational experience, but you haven't closed the elephant-sized deals. You haven't closed the 12-month, 7-figure transactions, in your history, and you need that to grow. So I was like, shoot, I gotta go get that experience. And so I thought to myself, what's one of the most complex things to sell? And, application software was one of them, because it's long sales cycles. You're changing business practices when you're doing them. And so I looked around, I found that PeopleSoft, just from a cultural perspective, was a great company. It had started off as an HR company and was emerging as a true competitor in the ERP space. And I dove in and went after that, and I got the role. And I went from being a vice president with over 100 people working for me to being a director with about 9 people working for me. And a lot of people always ask me, like, geez, was that a step backwards? And sure, from a title perspective, it was. But like I said, I was pursuing something specific. I was trying to check a box of something that I hadn't done previously, and it was these big ticket deals. So I spent the next 3 years at PeopleSoft getting that experience, being a field level manager with a smaller team, but being in the trenches, rolling up my sleeves and helping drive those deals. And I'd say this, Sam, to summarize it, Oracle really taught me how to be a really savvy businessman, and PeopleSoft taught me how to sell.
Oh, wow. And why do you say that? Because you feel like the 12-month, 18-month, $1 million deal is just a different level of sophistication in terms of like how to push that deal through the organization?
Yeah, certainly that. But also, again, going back to Oracle, I was a year as an SDR, 2 years as a sales rep, and then I was managing people. And as you know, when you're managing telesales, you're managing a lot of process and a lot of system and a lot of repeatable cadence. And, it's not like custom deal because you're looking at reps that are doing maybe 5, 6, 7, 10 deals a month. So it's not like you're camped out, in the lobby of these companies, right? And so, like I said, I learned how to really run a business and, understood the basics of finance and money coming in and out and structure and hiring profiles and comp planning and things like that. But that's different than selling. And so I got to PeopleSoft and, thrust right in there. So a lot of people always ask, like, hey, you went backwards in time. I said, yeah, but I advanced career-wise. So I ticked that box, and then I went to a company called BEA. PeopleSoft got bought by Oracle. and after 9 years at Oracle, I'd been around the circus long enough. I decided I didn't want to go back. So I went to a company called BEA, and I moved back to the West Coast. And that job was really interesting because they had a unique model. You managed there not just sales. You managed inside and outside sales. You managed the sales engineers. You didn't own the professional services people, but they were aligned directly to your region. And so I took over the Northwest and Rocky Mountain region and ran that for a couple years. And a similar story, BEA got bought by Oracle as well. So I was on a little bit of a run. And so at that point, I decided it was time to go maybe explore and try working for a smaller company.
And so let's hear about the Marketo experience. And I'm specifically curious. So you joined Marketo pre-revenue, is that right?
Yeah, sort of. They shipped the product in March of 2008, and I joined in May of 2008. So I joined May 27th, and I remember that because there were 27 customers that day, and those customers probably had, an average sale price of $15K. So there's maybe $300,000 in revenue.
And so how did you... when you think about a company I call that a post-revenue, it's a trademark phrase. So if you want to use it, feel free, but which is like that stage where it's not quite zero, but it's just past zero. But how did you, first of all, did you worry that you were too much in terms of your, the teams that you've managed and the processes and systems that you built, that it was maybe too much for such an early stage company? And how did you get right with the risk reward profile of a company that has, 27 customers and is tiny compared to these big organizations? At this point, you probably have a family. So how did you sort of make that decision and calibrate it in your own mind?
Yeah, it's a great question. I have kind of a two-part answer. So first of all, there was a stop between BEA and Marketo. There was a small company called Avalent that I spent 15 months at, and it was a 10-year-old company that had burned through a ton of venture cash, wasn't doing a lot in revenues, had burned through 5 VPs of sales in the last 5 years prior to me. But I had blinders on in a way, and what I saw was, number one, the chance to be a vice president of sales, not just be a regional vice president or something like that, Sam, but to be the vice president of sales and to work for the CEO, which there's a skill in learning how to work for a CEO. And so I saw that as valuable. And then number two, this was a company that had an old on-prem heavy solution, and they were reinventing it in a hosting space. So I went there and it failed. it failed. It was the mulligan of my career, if you want to go with that term. But I call it my year of learning and not of earning, because I didn't make much money at all. But I'll tell you this, and this is the second part of it, is, Sam, I don't think I ever would have landed the Marketo gig if I hadn't have done that, because otherwise I would have been like some mid-level manager coming out of a big $1 billion company. And so, I was able to go get this company. It was not an A player by any stretch of the imagination, but I learned a lot from the CEO. I learned, how to be dynamic, how to not be so regimented, which big $1 billion companies train you to be really, really good at. And like I said, I got my first exposure to SaaS. And without those two elements, I'm not sure I would have been that attractive to Marketo. But with Marketo, I got in through, and this is just a good life lesson about, a lot about who you know. Bruce Cleveland had been the CMO at Siebel, and he had been at Oracle prior to that, and we'd gotten acquainted. And he and I had flirted a couple times during my Oracle career about me coming over and working at Siebel with him, and we just never were able to make it happen. But I think we had, kind of some mutual affinity for trying to find something. And he had become the Series A investor along with his partner, a guy named Doug Pepper, in Marketo. And my timing was perfect. I reached out to him and said I was looking for something. And he said, hey, talk with these guys at Marketo. And that was in 2007 while I was at Avalent. And I met with the Marketo founders, and I adored them. But Sam, they didn't have a product. And I believe in self-awareness. I believe that's one of the best traits that, anybody in sales for sure, but also in leadership can have. And I knew that I wasn't a pre-product guy. I'm not a biz dev guy. At least at that stage of my career, that wasn't my skill set. I needed a product to go take to market. And so I met with them. I liked them, but I wasn't ready to make that risk, to your point. However, I'd made a pretty positive impression on them. So we kind of put everything on the back burner. And about a year later, CEO reached back to me and said, hey, Bill, we have a product. We have about 16 customers. We've been in market about a month and a half. I'd love to show it to you. And I came in and I fell in love again with the team and fell in love even more with the product in the space.
When you reflect back, because you were there, from 27 customers and a couple $100,000 to well over 250 million, is that right?
Yep.
So, and I'm asking this because, so many VCs and so many kind of founder advisors are whispering in their ears saying, is she the 0 to 10 head of sales and maybe she's not the 10 to 30? Is he the 10 to 30 but not the 30 to 100? How did you maintain your standing and your position, or were you layered and laddered over the course of those 7 years and 11 months, but you liked it for the bigger opportunity of, having equity in a company that's ultimately acquired for 1.8 billion is obviously worth more than whatever the title is at the company?
Yeah, all the above. I got in and was the head of sales and customer success, which was an army of about 5 people at the time, because like I said, I was the 17th person in. And I embarked upon an amazing 10-year journey of incredible highs and successes, and the biggest business challenges I've ever faced, and moments of heartbreak and despair and everything like that. But ultimately, what I tuned into with them is this was a team of A players that were building something to win. I'm not sure we all quite realized how big the space would get, but we all knew that we were building to be the leader of the space, of whatever it became. And that journey was amazing. Phil, the CEO, I say that other than my father, he's the most influential coach or manager or mentor that I've had. And, anytime you have a 10-year relationship with anybody, you have highs and lows. And so, yeah, there were 3 times during that decade that he brought in someone above me. And, the first time it hurt like hell, had me really consider, do I want to be on the thing? And I kind of went back to, basics and just thought that, geez, this team is built to win and this place is going somewhere. So I'm going to come back and do whatever job I have really, really well. And a year and a half later, that person was out and I was elevated back up. And, that happened a couple times. But I tell you, it's one of those things, Sam, that, I ran sales and customer success. When we got a little bigger, we split customer success off, gave it to someone else. And then, that didn't work out for a while. So I got it back. And then we carved biz dev off of me and channels, and that went away. And then it came back. And then there was a time when we started developing international and it wasn't mine. And then it was, and, then there was a time that I actually went and moved overseas to run international in Asia Pac. And so, I just look at it back like this. Did all those things feel great at the time? No. Was it an incredible learning experience that I look back on and wouldn't give up for anything at this point? I wouldn't, because even though it didn't feel great at the time, I look at all the things I've done. I've run SMB, I've run the enterprise, I've run, the direct, I've run the indirect, I've run the sales, I've run the customer success, I've run both. I've run domestic, I've run international. How many people can tell that story?
No,
I mean, that's just,
it's amazing.
It's an amazing story. And to do it going through, like you said, from, kind of a couple 100,000 revenue to a couple 100 million, to be in that pace. I mean, what I'll say is this: all the people that were layered above me during that time had stints there that were probably less than 2 years. And so I think most people kind of look at it and say, the one, kind of continuous, kind of rock was probably me inside of that organization. So I have a tremendous amount of pride of teaming up with that crew and doing what we did.
I think it's just a huge lesson, and it speaks volumes to your humility and to your work ethic that you were able to take those lumps and just keep going and ultimately emerge, on top of the heap after 8 years. Did you ever have like those tough when they're slicing off pieces of your portfolio? Are they saying, Bill, you're making X, but you got to make X less 20% because we're giving this job to somebody else? Did you have those kinds of conversations, or at least was your your economic security protected through all those ups and downs?
Yeah, no, they were pretty loyal to me on that. It was never an economic thing from, a W-2 or a comp plan perspective, because when you're growing, I mean, you got to remember this. You start off as a 10-person company, I'll use a sports analogy. It's like in baseball, like, when you're a small company, you pay left, right, and center field, right? But as you get bigger, you define what left, right, and center field look like, and you put people in them, and you want to try and avoid collisions. And so you start doing things. So it's to be expected. I mean, very few people have the fortune of going from, basically zero in revenue to a couple 100 million and going through those stages, back to your question that you'd asked. But at the same time, if you do have that ability, you've got to expect that most people are not, Larry Ellison, or, you brought Facebook earlier with Mark Zuckerberg. They don't open up it with the company and then just go with the company for the next couple of decades or a few decades in the same exact role. Only people evolve.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, for me personally, it's not a lesson. My ego is not really naturally positioned to, when somebody says, listen, Sam, you're a great sales leader, but somebody else should run marketing. I want to hold on to it, even though probably for the business, the best thing is to have the person that is exceptional at running marketing. And if they want to report to the CEO, they should be able to. So,
on that one of the things that I really learned at Marketo, and this is very divergent from Oracle. At Oracle, we used to have a saying that was control what you can control. And how that kind of manifests itself is there's another saying inside of Oracle was, people don't just stab you in the back here, they stab you in the front. Right? Like it was a tough environment. And so you protected your back, you protected yourself. Information was power, so you didn't share. And that's like, if you look at, like, you read any management philosophy or these, books by Peter Drucker or these, incredible management practitioners, basically that's like the worst thing you can have happen. What it does is it just absolutely kills productivity and transparency and communication across the company. Inside of Marketo, it was very opposite. And this is a fair point, that you have to have some trust, but there was always a mantra of, I'll use the morbid version of it, but what if you walked outside and got hit by the bus? Who would take your role? So there was always this focus on, do you have a strong number two? And by the way, when you're hiring your number two, this is the part that a lot of people, this is depending on the culture of the company, you have to really dial in. We always used to say, hire somebody better than you. And, look back over your shoulder because they're that good. And some companies, that might be bad. That might be the death. Someone might say, well, that person is better than you, and so I'm going to move up. But at Marketo, that's what got you promoted, was when you hired great people. They'd be like, all right, well, you don't need to be doing this job anymore. Let's give it to them, and let's move you into something that was really good. So it would open up opportunity to you. And so that's a bit of a mature, I think, leadership philosophy that I felt that was something that we got really right at Marketo.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really hard to scale a company if you're threatened by the people that work for you or with you even. You have to have a big enough vision that you are rooting for everybody's success, because ultimately the truth will catch up to you anyway. So if you're not any good, that will be found out. And you'll also become unreliable as somebody giving counsel or advice to management if it's clear that you're self-interested the whole time.
Well, I can tell you this. When I joined Pendo, our CEO, Todd Olson here, obviously the first reference he did was with Phil Fernandez, my CEO at Marketo, because I'd been with him for a decade. And after they had their conversation, Todd came to me and he said, hey, I talked to Phil and I talked with a couple other folks. And he said that from a skill set perspective, you could write books on the volume and velocity side of the business, but on the enterprise side of stuff, that's not as strong. You break 51% more towards the smaller business type of deals. He goes, what do you have to say about that? And I said, yeah, it's true. And he goes, should I be worried about that? And I said, no. And he goes, why? I said, well, let's think about this. You're hiring me as a CRO. If you're hiring me to be a CRO, you're not hiring me to be the alpha level salesperson. If that's what you're trying to get, then that's not what I want at this stage in my career, and it's not the right fit for both of us. So let's figure that out. I said, let me ask you a question. Was I at Marketo when it went public in 2013? He was like, yeah. I was like, is Marketo now their biggest business, their enterprise portion? He goes, yeah. I go, yeah, that's right. Because my job wasn't to go be the best enterprise leader. My job was to hire the enterprise leader and make sure that they were awesome at what they did, make sure that they had the tools and the things they needed to go and recruit and train and bring on the best enterprise sales talent in the world. And I said, so he's absolutely right. Phil said is, my earlier days when I was more hands-on in sales was definitely much more bent towards the SMB, but the enterprise stuff, I had a few years at PeopleSoft and a couple more years after that at BEA before I, kind of stopped doing that as my role and moved up into real big leadership type of positions.
I think, and your point is exactly right. A lot of people don't really realize the number one job of a C-level executive is recruiting. It's not your job to have all the answers. It's your job to make the smartest people want to work with you that do have the answers.
It's number one, Sam. I mean, my CEO's over in London right now because we're opening up our office there in February. And I just hung up with him before I got on with you. And he said I had 6 interviews today. And so it's so true. It's like with this pace that we're growing, probably 4 or 5 interviews per day. So, obviously the CRO, their job is to obviously deliver performance. But number 2 is to obviously put the players on the field. And so that second part is just such a core component of the role.
Absolutely. So this has just been such an easy conversation. We're actually almost at the end of our time together. But one of the things that, you and I were talking about offline, and we've got so many up and comers that are listening to this right now. You have this phrase, you said career paths are for B players. And, when we're looking back on your career, certainly you've done a lot of different things. You've taken different roles and different titles. So when you say career paths are for B players, tell us what you mean.
Yeah. So this creates a little controversy, and that's not why I say it. I'm trying to provoke a thought process more than anything.
We like provocation, just to be clear.
All right, well, good. This will maybe do it for you. But let me first start this way, that Marketo and then here at Pendo, we have a career path. We have a path where we can go recruit SDRs who are, right out of school or early in their career, train them up in that role of how to qualify, how to position our product, how to talk and deal with, potential buyers, and then a path up to corporate sales role, which can lead them to, mid-market, or they could go into management roles. So we do have a carved out path. So it is there, and it's necessary. It's necessary for me to give that to recruit top talent. People want to be able to see that if they join here, that they have a place to go. So it sounds a little speaking outside of the other side of my mouth, and that's not what I'm attempting to do. It's just that I think that's kind of table stakes. You have to have it. My point about A players is that A players don't tend to follow a defined career path. What happens with A players is opportunity knocks, and smart, savvy A players answer the door when it knocks, and they go follow it. And that could be something that's a very linear track of, hey, you've been an individual and we want to put you into a first line management. It could be in something that says we want you to go overseas. It could be we want you to start up a new division or a new function inside of a business. That's not so linear. But the important thing there is that I just simply say, for people that are top performers, opportunity is going to present it to them, to themselves, and take it. Just take it. I had the fortune, Sam, to move to, you mentioned earlier, Sydney at the age of 45. And, I spent 13 months living there. My family, we loved it. And when we came back, all I thought was, I wish I'd done that at 25. You know?
Oh my God! Before you were married, Jesus.
Yeah. So that's a whole different podcast. But but you get the gist. There is like opportunity knocks for people. And like I said, my first really big one was I had a boss that encouraged me to go get this job in Boston. And as I said earlier in the podcast, I'd never even set foot in the state of Massachusetts. Had no friends there. I was a West Coast guy, and I was like, gosh, I don't want to do it for those reasons. She's like, you're going to do it because this is going to advance your career and give you that turbocharge of your career path. And so I was like, And I fortunately listened to her. And the job wasn't just offered to me. I had to go compete for it and get it. But I was successful at getting it. And I went there. And like I said, it was probably the key catalyst point in my career of advancing me.
That's awesome. Bill, it's been awesome to have you on the show. Right at the end here, we tend to like to do, pay it forward kind of shout outs. If you can think about, it can be books that you've read that really had a big impact on you in any way. It can be people. Like, who are some of your influences, whether it's great sales leaders or great books that you've read or any kind of ideas that you want us to leave us with that we can sort of do more digging on?
Yeah, let me give you a couple of those things. So first of all, since we're talking about career advancement, there's a book out there called Multipliers by Liz Wiseman. Anybody that's making a move from an individual contributor to a manager, I think should read this book because it's like multipliers. It's about if you're getting promoted from an individual to a manager, it's probably because you're being recognized as really good at what you do in that individual role. And what someone's looking for you to do is multiply yourself, make 7 or 8 mini me's of what you are. And it really helps you tune into that leadership and management philosophy around that. And then secondly, around some key mentors. We mentioned this group, DMD at Oracle, that Tom Siebel and Benioff were a part of. It has an incredible lineage of people that are out there. I mean, James Ramsey, who went on to become the head of worldwide sales at NetSuite, came out of that org. Mark Huffman, who also went on to run all of NetSuite's businesses and now is the COO at Blackline. Erica Schultz, who's the CRO over at New Relic, Norm Gennaro, who's the CRO over at Zendesk. There's a group of us that all work together, and it was kind of a magical time. We worked for a woman named Hillary Coppola McAdams, who was the president of Salesforce and then the COO of New Relic. She's since gone into venture capital. But, there's just some incredible people there. And to your point about paying it forward, I didn't do this alone. I had people pushing me. I had people rooting for me. I had people mentoring me. I had people telling me really hard things, hey, your tie is a little bit askew, or, you look a little chubby, you should lose some weight. I mean, I make light of it. I make
things that are not allowed to say today.
Yeah, I make light of it there, Sam. But the reality is that they were people that cared about me, and they were really trying to do that. And so, when I was coming to Pendo, there were 4 individuals that I reached out to get their counsel as I was looking at opportunities and exploring different things. One was clearly my dad. The other one was Phil Fernandez, the old CEO of Marketo, who's, we've continued a great friendship and we text almost every day. And then I have a friend, John Hunter, who is the Chief Revenue Officer at Micro Focus, and then Mark Huffman, who I previously mentioned, who's the COO of Blackline. I reached out to those 4 people and said, look, here's what I'm looking at. Here's my highs and lows. What do you think? And it was great. Like, to a T, all of them essentially said, choose Pendo. One of them didn't say it by name. One of them was just kind of subtly nudging me, but the other 3 were like, Bill, go to Pendo. You're going to go create a space. You're going to help create some of the culture inside of that company. You're going to have a hell of a lot of fun. And knock on wood, hopefully you repeat what you did at Marketo.
That's awesome. So Bill, you guys are growing. I'm sure you're hiring. If people out there want to connect with you and maybe apply for a job or maybe just seek you out as a mentor, are you okay with people contacting you? And then if so, what's the preferred mechanism? Is it LinkedIn? Is it email? How would you prefer?
Yeah, bill.binch at pendo.io is my email here. Fire away. Just come at me direct.
Awesome. Bill, thanks so much for joining us on the show. It was great.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sam. Appreciate it.
Hey everybody, it's Sam's Corner. What a fantastic interview with Bill. It's clear why people love working for him and how he's capable of taking these companies to such great heights. And I particularly liked his advice on career pathing. It's a common theme, and it's something that you hear time and time again in this podcast. And the real point of it is, when opportunity knocks, answer the door. So I think Bill's phrase is, B players have career paths. The point is that It's not that you don't seek upward mobility. The point is that you have to be open to opportunity and open to possibility. I think one of the best examples of this, I believe it was Sheryl Sandberg, who was working for Larry Summers, something like 20 years ago or something like that. And somebody called, and it was Google. I think it was Eric Schmidt. And she was having all this consternation about should she move out to the West Coast. She was in DC at the time. And ultimately, Larry said, listen, it's a rocket ship. Get over there. And she hopped on that rocket ship, and obviously that took her up through the ranks of Google and then into Facebook. And it's because she answered the door when opportunity knocked. So please remember to do this. So that's been Sam's Corner, pretty short one. But the point is lean in on your career, take opportunity and take advantage when you can. And if there's a new opportunity, if there's an opportunity to move to a new city, one of my good friends, Dan Brown, he was in New York. He worked for me at Axial. He worked for me at Livestream. He then went on to WeWork. He's at WeWork now. Opportunity knocked. WeWork said, go to Austin. He moved to Austin. Opportunity knocked again. He moved to San Francisco. This is a man that is putting his career ambitions as a top priority in his life, and he's getting shit done. So we love you, Dan. We hope you're out there listening. Now, if you want to check out the show notes, see upcoming guests, play more episodes from our incredible lineup of sales leaders, visit saleshacker.com and head to this podcast tab. If you want to join us in San Diego, please do that. It's unleash.outreach.io. And remember that code is $100 off is SHPOD. You'll find us anywhere podcasts are made. So if you enjoyed this episode, please share with your peers on LinkedIn, Twitter, or elsewhere. If you've got a great idea or a guest for the show, if you want to get in touch with me, find me on Twitter at Sam F. Jacobs or on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/Sam F. Jacobs. And lastly, if you're out there in a city that the Revenue Collective is not yet present in, we're in Denver, Boston, London, Toronto, New York, and Amsterdam. And we're growing all of those chapters. And we're also launching consulting services. So if you want to figure out what's going on with the Revenue Collective, or if you're in a city that doesn't yet have the Revenue Collective, we're launching in about 10 to 15 new markets in 2019. That's a good reason to reach out to me on LinkedIn as well. So we're looking for VP and above sales and marketing leaders and success leaders across commercial functions at high growth companies. And those are the folks that represent the now over 200 people that are in the Global Revenue Collective. So ping me on LinkedIn to learn more. That's linkedin.com/in and then /Sam F. Jacobs. Finally, thanks again to our sponsors, Chorus, the leading conversation intelligence platform for high growth sales teams, and Outreach, the leading sales engagement platform. I will see you next time.